I think I stopped just before that. Salvage was the one that got the mass bans and Iron Jar. Yes, LM. What is it? LM 415, 417, 4 LM. The Day of Infamy. Oh my God. Yeah. That was the day we lost our entire H&M and salvage shell. The H&M shell, not a big deal because we still had the low manning thing, but that was when I got like best brother LM17, the Day of Infamy. The Day of Infamy. I had so much fun talking so much shit on Killing Ifrit and Blue Garter about everyone that got banned, especially Blue Garter, because that is where all of the angriest people congregated at that time. I had such a wonderful time, and let me tell you exactly what happened. My brother he's kind of a shyster, all right, and I know this about him. Like, my brother was the type of guy who at some point, no shit, pretended to be a female, obviously a Mithra, right? To convince people to give him gil and items and stuff in that game, right? Stuff that I was just like, are you serious? Like, embarrassing stuff like that, right? My brother also at some point robs an entire like link shell because the leader, the officers pissed him off. So he robbed everything from like their chests. So he was just like getting like Kirin's Asodes and shit or whatever like you could sell back then. He just got it all and just like sold it. It was just like, he was that kind of guy, right? Now, the funniest thing about this is that you're like, this is clearly an evildoer. Except that he's my brother and he's actually like super cool, but we were young and it was like our first online game, so you gotta forgive him, right? But anyway, I was there as good influence. So the story all comes in from LM17 where it's like, we saw it happen firsthand. And they were like, oh my god, we can build an Ares set in no time flat, because instead of like getting one level 15 or like level 35 drop for this gear every like 3 weeks, we can get like all of them right now for everyone in the link shell right now. And it was super easy to do. It was literally a matter of like, you get the item into the party pool and then you just kick people from the party. And you kick people and they rejoin, and then when they get kicked, the item stays in their treasure box. So now they're in their own party and they have the item in their treasure, and then the main party has the item in their treasure. I forgot exactly how it worked, but that's how the link shell, my salvage link shell was doing it, right? So they were literally duping items. And I had very, very, very limited history with Diablo 2. My brother played it a lot. My brother got banned in that game constantly for, guess what? Duplicating items. So I shouldn't have to be the one to tell him that this is a terrible idea. But of course he had the same attitude as everyone else did at that point in time, of just like, what's Square gonna do? Ban us all? To which I thought about it, like, this is a conversation I remember we had at a Taco Bell. And I was like, so I'm sitting there, and we're eating like our 49-cent Meximelts because, like, you know, this is before inflation, of the Taco Bell inflation, the Great Wars of Demolition Man, where Taco Bell became the only fast food joint. But that's a story for a different day. But anyway, and I'm thinking about their history, like Square Enix, and not even just Square Enix, but Tanaka, because Tanaka is the most important person to talk about when it comes to handling 11. And if anyone remembers playing 11 during that time frame, literally everything that any North American wanted at all for any reason, the Square Enix like community team, like the people that work at Square Enix that are in charge of trying to like keep a good positive rapport with their player base, their response for everything was just like, no. I'm not gonna get in that topic, but back in those days, Square Enix, their stance was literally just like, this is our game, we make the dopest shit on the planet, and you just play it. That was literally like how it felt that they handled everything. Was like, they knew, they were aware They're like, we make the best fucking games you could ever fucking imagine, and you know it, and you are gonna play anyway, regardless of how you complain on these forums about how you're gonna quit the game and whatever because like we don't do X, Y, and Z. That is how it felt anytime they interact with anyone. It was just like we knew it. And the funny thing about that was like that was what I liked. Because it made me like, it gave me such confidence in Square and also 11, where I was just like, dude, any dumb idea that people come up with, they're just gonna like brush it off and be like, this is our game. I'm like, whatever, kid. Like, this is how we do Final Fantasy. So I thought about how Square Enix like talks to their customers and Square like Final Fantasy 11 players in general, especially North Americans. And I also remembered how they first like were dealing with RMT and they were just like ruthless. So I was like, oh. And I got to convince my brother, I begged my brother, inside Taco Bell. I was like, hey, we cannot do salvage with this link shell anymore. And he was pissed because he was like, oh no, I'm about to finish my Ares Cuirass and all this shit. And the greed. You could see the greed in his eyes. He was like a cartoon from like Tom and Jerry with like giant dollar signs for eyeballs. And he was just like, oh no, it's gonna happen. And I was like, dude, you gotta... Did I just get killed by Garnet? That is the least likely character I thought would kill me. I'm in the middle of dying and telling a story about Final Fantasy XI. And how I convinced my brother and I saved my brother's character. And his soul. Because I convinced him. I was like, don't sin. Tanaka is watching. Tanaka will kill you. Tanaka doesn't care that you've been subscribed to this game for X amount of time. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about you. You understand? Your subscription was inevitable. You love Final Fantasy. You eat this shit. Of course you're going to give him money. You are allowed to live in his world. Don't you understand? That's how these people think. You mean nothing to him. He will just ban you and thousands of other people without even blinking an eye. And he was like, nah, no way, man. But I got him. I convinced him. I was like, you have to do this for me. I promise you. And that was months. Like, we're talking a long-ass time before the mass bans happened. To the point where he was starting to think that, like, you know, we could probably go back to the Link Shell because, you know, look at all these people. The Link Shell we just left, they finished their Ares Cuirass, they finished their Marduk Cuirass, they have everything. And because my brother is such an elitist, and that's what he's motivated by, he's bitter toward me because he's like, oh, now all we're doing is low-man ZNMs and HNMs. Meanwhile, these guys are walking away with the coolest gear ever, and, you know, and then it happened. And it happened at the perfect time because it was a night where we had stayed up all night doing H&M stuff. So we were tired as hell, and we were like, all right, let's go to Denny's. So we went to Denny's, and we came back. And when we came back from Denny's, it had happened. Because I remember as soon as we got back to our computer, back then, like, the way we communicated was through AOL Instant Messenger and Windows Messenger. His screen was just filled with people. No one talked to me because I was just antisocial. But everyone talked to him because, you know, he's an elitist social butterfly. And I was just like the tag-along. They wanted me for, like, my Bard and my Dragoon. And the Dragoon part I'll get to later because I had some secret strats, which I think is common knowledge now, but still, like, super secret strats. I was a main healer. I dropped White Mage to main heal as Dragoon. But more of that later. So anyway, I'm fighting these bosses, but while it's happening, it happened. LM17 happened. His computer's filled completely with messages from people that we used to team up with, party with, and they're like, hey man, were you banned? Hey man, were you banned? Hey man, were you banned? I was banned today. Can you fucking believe I was banned? And not just like, you know, their main character, the dual boxing character, the mule character, the character that has access to like the Link Shell bank and stuff. They're like, everything's gone. People are like beside themselves. They're like making like YouTube videos, crying, They're on. If YouTube even existed back then, I think it did when Elm 17 happened. It totally did. Oregon, YouTube came out in 2005, 2006. There's totally YouTube videos. I was like, I don't know where else the videos would be on. But anyway, people crying because what had happened was, for those who aren't aware, Square Enix found out that this duplication trick was a thing that could happen in Salvage. Months ahead of time. One guy got his main account banned, had a ton of HNS Nostalgia, even a relic and a half, but his Bard Mule didn't get hit. I know a guy that got like 3 relics taken. Like not taken, but like I know a guy who had like 3 relics and was like a hella no-lifer. And granted, good, because I hate his guts, but like gone, right? So it was a guy who was Red Mage and Paladin, and the 3 relics he had was Aegis, Excalibur, and the Mendao, the dagger. So he would be that dick that would like try to like be in like weapon skill burn parties as Red Mage, Sub Ninja, like using Mendao and Excalibur, thinking that he was cool. Anyway, he was that guy because he was like, look at my cool shit I have, because like fuck my life. Anyway, that guy got banned because he's a cheater pumpkin eater, and he didn't have the foresight. He didn't know. He didn't know who he was dealing with, but I did. I paid attention, and I saved my brother and my soul. So the lore was, I think everyone got banned. And someone might have to correct me on this. I think everyone got banned in May of, 20XX, right? Mega Man year. Who knows? I'll admit I was petty enough to be a little happy. Some of the people that were well known on my server got banned. Oh, that's not pettiness. That is not pettiness at all. So it's only because I'm related to my brother, and like we're basically best friends on top of that, and like I know that he's not an asshole, that allows me to tolerate the way he plays games. All of the people that he became friends with, I fucking hated their guts. So when I found out they got banned, I was doing a fucking touchdown dance in the patio of our house. LM17 was a fantastic day for me and a terrible day for like at least 200 people. So the lore is, all the duping stuff started happening in November-ish. And I'm pretty sure the bans didn't start happening until like May. But here's the most fucked up thing. I don't think they fixed the duping until either a week before or the week after the bans happened. So the whole thing here is that Square Enix became aware of it in November. And it was just happening. Like it started picking up speed. Then people were like no one was posting on forums because everyone was afraid of being banned. But then eventually, after a couple of months, people got more and more brave, and they're like, oh, I guess it's fine, right? Obviously, salvage is so hard and the drop rate is so low to compensate. This exists to compensate for how difficult it is, right? This is intentional, right? People convinced themselves. 22nd of January was LM17 day. All right, so when did the duping become? So it was January. So then November. Okay, so it wasn't as big of a time frame as I thought. So they became aware of it in November. People were doing it probably in November, because I remember it was around my birthday, so that kind of makes sense, I guess. Maybe it wasn't around my birthday, because I literally thought it happened in the end of the month. Oh, it started in the end of the month, and then the bans happened in... Okay, I'm not horribly wrong. Anyway, sorry. Square Enix knew it was happening, but they didn't put out any news at all on their website. So they weren't like, hey, we noticed there's a problem, don't do this. They said absolutely nothing. Square Enix, in their report of all the people they banned, they said specifically that they started tracking people who did this since November, but didn't say anything at that point. They didn't say like, hey, this is a thing we know about, don't do it, you can get banned. They didn't warn anyone. When they banned everyone, they're just like, hey, in the terms of service for playing this game, we wrote down in that giant list of nonsense, we wrote down, don't exploit the game. You broke rule number, 107, which means you get banned permanently. No slap on the wrist, just Boom, permanent ban. List of nonsense everyone skips? Exactly. They're like, you broke Rule 107, you exploited the game. And then people were like, well, I didn't know I was exploiting the game, I thought it was part of the mechanics. No, you're all idiots. I knew. Anyone who was, you know, playing that game without their parents' supervision, they knew that it was a bad idea. No one in the mid-2000s was like, oh yeah, duplicating items is a normal thing that should be happening. And anyone that says that was the case, they were just butthurt and trying to get their relics back. Yes, exactly. So it only happened after the fact. People were like, oh, we thought it was intentional. No one got their stuff back. No one at all. People were like, oh, I got banned unintentionally. And they'd be like, no. If you were banned and you didn't dupe, we banned you for a different reason. Well, what reason? Not going to tell you. Not going to respond to your email. Not tell you shit. We banned your account. And so many people were like, oh, they're going to kill Final Fantasy because of this and blah, blah, blah. And then you know what happened? It didn't die. People resubbed. They made new characters. They actually, what people did was, like, they went to eBay and they bought all the Chinese accounts. So all of these guys just went and they gave all their money to IGE and Steve Bannon and whoever else, like, you know. Because fun fact, Steve Bannon, who, like, you might know from, like, Republican political Trump stuff, like, he ran IGE, which was, like, the Chinese sweatshop gill farmers and, like, wild gold farmers back in the day. Like, that was his operation. That's how I knew him. So when, like, American politics was happening, I was just like, Steve Bannon. I'm like, wait a minute. And I looked it up and I was like, that's the IGE guy. That's the American guy that used to run sweatshops for in-game currency. That's weird. But anyway, that's the long story of LM17. So I convinced my brother. He didn't believe me. So I guess it was only 2 months. But yeah, by the time the bans happened, dude, I got the most delicious fucking week worth of fucking pineapple pizza. And it was all, he paid for it all. He was like, hey man, dinner's on me tonight and dinner's on me for the rest of the week. And I said, cool, we're going to Hungry Howie's and I want a pineapple pizza with butter cheese crust every day for that whole week. So he spent like $35 because it's only like $5. Pineapple should not be on pizza? I mean, you're going to have to leave. I mean, you were doing great, right? You brought up some cool topics, talked about 9, talked about 8, you said you like the old stuff, that was all cool. Now you're going to have to leave. No, I'm just kidding. I don't care.